Week 1 of the NFL season. We are here. We are literally drinking from the fire hose. All the information, all the data is hitting us at once. Welcome to Week 1, the early edition of Halftime with Harmon. I'm Matt Harmon. We're going to be talking fantasy football, talking the NFL games, running through the whole slate, and there is so much to go over right now. I already feel like I'm drowning, but in a good way. You know, it's good to be here. Thanks everybody that's tuning in. You know, you can stream this show live on Periscope, through Twitter, Facebook, Yahoo Sports Fantasy, on Twitch and YouTube. Come watch us, come comment, and we are going to talk fantasy football. Let's just dive right into it. Early game action, some of the big takeaways. Obviously, we already have some injuries. That is the inevitable downside of the NFL, of playing fantasy football, and we already have injuries to talk about. Leonard Fournette left the week one first half against the Giants, and it's a rough start there. Not a lot of points flying. We obviously have Marquise Godwin, another player that went down with a week 1 injury against the Vikings. Those are kind of your big ones right off the top. Another one that's kind of tangentially related to fantasy, Chantrell Henderson, who is somehow, some way, starting at right tackle for the Houston Texans. He went down with an injury in the week 1 halftime game. So, not great. But we're going to dive into the week 1 action, and we're going to start right off here with Pittsburgh and Cleveland. No surprise to those who have paid attention to Pittsburgh over the last few years that this game is low scoring. I talked about this in my week 1 slate guide, which you can read on Yahoo. I talked about how, per RotoWorld's Rich Rebar, the under has hit in Pittsburgh's early 1 p.m. start games 18 of the last 22 times, and Ben Roethlisberger has a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. Well, that's actually going worse today. Roethlisberger has 3 picks to start the half. Not great. The good news is, of course, James Conner, who is starting in place of Le'Veon Bell, he's carried the ball 8 times for 46 yards and scored a touchdown. If you used him to stream a running back position in week 1, you're doing pretty good here. James Conner is somebody that, as long as Le'Veon Bell sits, he is going to be a must-start in fantasy football. Obviously, this is a pretty good spot in a low-scoring, competitive game, even though it's on the road. Cleveland, just a mediocre defense. This was a good spot for him throughout the week, but we knew that this was going to be a guy that you wanted to play. The number one thing here is what's going to happen with him when Le'Veon Bell comes back. I think they're going to have to split the load. I think this is a concern. Look, if you own Le'Veon Bell, you are going to be a little worried about James Conner going forward. Like, this is a guy that the team invested a 3rd-round pick in last year's draft. He's a local guy. He's from the area. You know, they're going to want to use him. So that's the big story coming out of this half. Obviously, the passing game has been a bit of a mess there in a rainy, windy game in Cleveland. So not too surprising there. On the Browns side, Tyrod Taylor at one point grabbed his hand. It looked like he was a little banged up, but the Browns offense keeps on moving, and no points so far. Nothing from Josh Gordon. That is a bit of a concern, but also not too surprising. Chris Mortensen from ESPN reported before the games kicked off that this was going to be an issue. That he might play about 20 snaps is what they were looking at. So we're not too surprised that we haven't seen anything from him just yet. I think in this game, obviously, the big takeaway is, in fact, James Conner. And luckily, we're going to be able to take some of your questions here. And one of the first ones that we've got on the top is actually about DeSean Watson. It's a game we've got here. I'm watching it right now. This was a bit of a concern with Watson coming into the year, some regression, and we have seen it in the first half. Pulling up the box score, obviously, New England is winning this game pretty decisively, 21-6 right now. DeSean Watson just 61 yards passing, an interception. He's gone 5 for 13, a 38.5% completion rate. Rough, taking 2 sacks, a 21 quarterback rating. This is a rough spot for DeSean Watson going on the road into New England against a fierce defense. No doubt that was always going to be an issue. But for Watson, he definitely is underperforming in this contest. New England's defense does not look like the pushover that we thought it would, that we thought they might have been, that they were last year. They invested a bit in the defensive line in Adrian Claiborne, Danny Shelton, and these guys are coming to play. So it's a rough first outing for Watson, but this is what you kind of have to expect from him. He's not going to be an every week QB1 start. That's why I was not drafting him at his cost in fantasy, and why a lot of analysts were recommending him as a fade. Elsewhere in this game, sticking around, Tom Brady, 3 touchdowns. We know what to expect from Brady. The interesting part about this is the backfield. James White has been out there, 2 carries for 2 yards, but he is, in fact, making an impact as a receiver. 2 catches, 17 yards, and a touchdown. You got to love to see that from James White. As long as Sony Michel is out, and he missed this Week 1 contest, he's been injured all through preseason, I think James White is a guy that you can use as a flex play, especially in PPR leagues. He's someone that you want to throw out there. The other big impact players for New England, Rob Gronkowski, of course, 4 for 60 and a touchdown. You know what to expect out of Gronk. That's why you draft him high in fantasy. That's why you love owning Gronk. And the other player to talk about is Philip Dorsett, 4 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. I think while Julian Edelman is out, he is going to be interesting. I actually streamed Cordero Patterson in a couple spots today because I guess I just don't like to learn from my mistakes. And he only has 1 catch for 6 yards. Not a great look there. Elsewhere, obviously Houston's offense is disappointing. I think this is going to be, unless they turn it on in the second half, and perhaps that could happen, then you're going to be looking at a rough spot for most of your Houston players there. Moving on to some of the other questions that we've got. We got a question about Andrew Luck. How does he look? He doesn't look great. It's going to be a slow start for Andrew Luck. This offense too is a bit of a mess. They are going against a great front 4 in the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a team that has Geno Atkins as a top pass rushing defensive tackle. They have Carlos Dunlap, one of the best left defensive ends in the NFL. Carl Lawson is a nice up and coming player. Even Andrew Billings, their other defensive tackle, is a nice player as well. So kind of to be expected, a slower outing for Andrew Luck and the Cincinnati Bengals, or with the Indianapolis Colts against the Bengals here. Now, this was a game that I took the Bengals +3 when it opened up. That was definitely a bet that I liked. That's currently not hitting right now. Andy Dalton started off the game with an interception that was almost returned for a touchdown. He actually made the touchdown-saving tackle there. But this game is I think it's going to be pretty low scoring. It did not turn into the kind of sneaky shootout that I think some analysts expected it to be. The interesting note here is, of course, Eric Ebron has the touchdown for the Indianapolis Colts, not Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle, right now, he's just 2 for 13, long of 8 yards. That's obviously not great if you're looking for him to be a big-time fantasy contributor. This was a solid but not great matchup. It did look like a good spot, and the reason I think a lot of people liked Jack Doyle in this spot was he is kind of a short route runner. Andrew Luck was dinking and dunking a little more in the preseason. So that was not that was kind of the spot for Doyle, but it hasn't worked out so far. Ebron has the touchdown. I think Ebron is going to be a factor. Now, of course, T.Y. Hilton leading the team in targets with 6, has caught 3 for 33. Solid start for him. I think you look to Hilton to kind of lead this team in targets by a decent amount. He's the one guy I think you can count on week to week. Another interesting note, too, Nyheim Hines has 4 catches on 4 targets. He was a guy that started to look like somebody to fade the longer the preseason went on. This was a guy that we were looking to move on from. People kind of stopped drafting him after he was a hot sleeper early on in the action. But I do think that this is a nice sign for Nyheim Hines. But also it's worth noting that Jordan Wilkins has been kind of the clear feature back here with 8 carries for 29 yards. He's been out there on the majority of the snaps. And Jordan Wilkins is definitely somebody, if he has not been picked up in your league yet, he's worth grabbing. Marlon Mack inactive in this game. Don't really know when he's going to be back. So Jordan Wilkins is definitely somebody for your fantasy teams that you need to pick up. A couple other questions that we've gotten in the chat so far. Can we finally say that Stefon Diggs, not Amari Cooper, was the best wide receiver from the 2015 draft? I want you all to know that I've been saying that for about a year now. Stefon Diggs, if you followed my work, you know I'm a big, big fan of his. He had caught a great-looking touchdown from Kirk Cousins in the first half. Minnesota is playing at home against a 49ers defense that is definitely exploitable, but Stefon Diggs is just an incredible player. And let's actually move over to that game right now because there's a lot to talk about there. Minnesota controlling the game 10-3 at halftime, and I really like the idea of what we're seeing from this Vikings offense. Dalvin Cook fumbled the ball early. That was not a great sign. And also we've seen a decent amount of Latavius Murray, who has four carries for 16 yards. I think this was something that we should have been aware of coming into this game. Latavius Murray, they talked about this being a split. Even Dalvin Cook and Latavius Murray kind of talked about it as being a split backfield. So never great when you see the team actually talk about that. And I think that it's interesting to note that it's somewhat come to fruition. Of course, the good news is this right here, these 5 catches for 47 yards for Dalvin Cook. That is, definitely something that we need to see. Latavius Murray is, not a great asset in the passing game. Last year, we saw Jerick McKinnon be that clear passing down back. But if Dalvin Cook, even if he's not going to see, the Lions' share of the carries, if we do get him going for five catches a week, then that's really going to boost up his fantasy floor, make him game script independent. Elsewhere in the target distribution, you've got 6 targets, leading the team for Adam Thielen, 4 catches for 57 yards. That's great to see. I think Thielen and Kirk Cousins will continue to have a great connection, as Thielen is that big-time slot receiver, can make vertical plays from the slot. That's a great sign for him. And obviously mentioned Stefon Diggs earlier, has caught all 3 of his targets for 43 yards and a touchdown. I think both these guys are players you start every week. Of course, we know that this was a great matchup, like I said, but both these guys should continue to crush. On the 49ers side, mentioned Marquise Goodwin off the top. He got 1 target and has since been removed from the game with a quad injury. We will have to keep our eye on that. Goodwin was a player I really liked as a breakout candidate. Was not playing him this week due to the matchup with Xavier Rhodes, as I talked about this morning. But going forward, if he's injured, this is a big blow to this offense. And really, it looks like the winner so far is George Kittle, who leads the team with 5 targets, 4 catches for 45 or 54 yards. George Kittle is definitely a breakout tight end as long as he can stay healthy. That was the big worry about him in drafts. He came in with a bit of an injury and looking a little shaky. But if he's out there, if he's playing well, this is good news for George Kittle and those like Andy Behrens, our own Andy Behrens from Yahoo Fantasy, that really believed in him as a breakout candidate. The other news that people are concerned about, and some people have brought it up in the chat so far, is Alfred Morris. While Morris leads the team with 9 carries, 40 yards, he did lose a fumble at the goal line. Actually fumbled twice. The team got the first one back, and then Morris went ahead and fumbled again. That's not a great sign. That's not a great sign for Alfred Morris and his fantasy stock. The 49ers don't have that many options in the backfield right now. Matt Breida kind of coming into the season banged up, sort of the nominal starter. He has 6 carries for 16 yards. And has so far not shown up in the pass game. We'll have to keep an eye on this in the second half if Morris continues to struggle. Again, this was a bad matchup for Morris, so we weren't expecting too much. But if he doesn't show more in the second half, we got to be worried about him as a guy who you spent a late-round pick on in fantasy football. Now, one game I definitely want to touch on, the Saints and the Buccaneers right now. Unbelievable contest, 31-24, Tampa Bay leading it in New Orleans. This game is not going as I expected. Now, I can tell you personally, I took the Saints and the points in this game, minus 9.5. Not liking the way this is looking for me right now. Tampa Bay up 31-24, as I mentioned. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been lights out. 2 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground. He's thrown a touchdown, a deep bomb to DeSean Jackson, and another shorter one to my guy Chris Godwin from Penn State. He's looking good out there. This is a really gifted offense, and Fitzpatrick is taking advantage of a matchup that we thought the Saints defense might perform a little bit better than this at home in week 1. That has not been the case so far. Also, another note in this contest, Ronald Jones, the rookie second-round pick who lost a starting job to Peyton Barber in the preseason, was actually inactive for this contest. He is not a guy that's even close to being on the fantasy radar right now. If you drafted Ronald Jones because of that draft pedigree or what the hype was coming into the year, you can feel free to go ahead and drop Ronald Jones on that one. So, yeah, Peyton Barber definitely in the mix here. I saw somebody actually ask good trade targets early on. Peyton Barber might be a guy that you can acquire on the cheap right now. He's clearly the top running back here. The only running back to get a carry is Jacquizz Rodgers, who we know is just kind of a journeyman. Rodgers also has 1 catch for 2 yards. Barber probably not going to come out of this game with a monster stat line, and if he doesn't score a touchdown, maybe you can acquire about Peyton Barber on the cheap right now. Also, Chris Godwin, another player you might want to target in a trade on this offense. I mean, he's going to come in with, a lot of hype right now, but definitely somebody to keep on the radar. And elsewhere in this Saints game on their side, obviously you have Drew Brees killing it so far. 81 completion percentage in the first half, 2 touchdowns through the air, one to Alvin Kamara actually scored a rushing touchdown as well. We expected to see a lot from him. And we are indeed seeing it. 6 carries for 29 yards and a touchdown, and another 4 catches through the air for 85 yards. He was kind of the anchor play on DFS this week, no doubt about it. Elsewhere in the Saints offense, 8 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown, and we are actually just getting some big play across the wire. Tyrod Taylor right now, actually repping the Ty God shirt here. So, yeah, that's the Ty and the GOAT. Yeah, we're feeling good about Tyrod here. That's great. On the Cleveland Browns offense right now, this is a team that we're excited about, and we're hoping to see a lot out of them in the second half. So shout out to the Tyrod believers there. Pulling up the play right now. We're not pulling up the play. We don't have the rights to that. But he did rush this touchdown in for 20 yards. This is what you love about Tyrod, man. And as long as he is starting under center, he's a streaming quarterback. They play the Saints next week. We're obviously seeing what frickin' Ryan Fitzpatrick is doing to the Saints, and it's not looking good for the Saints. So Tyrod Taylor's going to be on the streaming radar, even if he comes out of this game with kind of a mediocre stat line. You're still going to be looking to stream him next week against New Orleans. Another player that people asked about was Alex Collins. What's going on with Alex Collins? So let's pop over to that game. Baltimore and Buffalo in the first half. The Ravens are actually in the red zone right now. They're crushing the Bills 20 to nothing. 26 to nothing because they just scored. And Alex Collins right now, he has a rushing touchdown, and we'll get to the passing game in a minute and some excitement from yours truly here. Alex Collins right now, he had that early touchdown. He also had a fumble, 6 carries for 8 yards. He's in control of the game. I think Collins, as long as they don't let people pull, they don't pull in the second half, any starters if they just don't crush the Bills forever. Alex Collins is in a good spot here as the Ravens control the game against a defense that, they did do a lot to improve their run defense, but it is a situation where if Collins is getting, 15 carries, 10 carries in this game, I think he's going to be all right. He did lose a fumble. That's something to keep your eye on, but Baltimore's not really having to do much in the rush game right now. The only guy who has more than a single carry on this team is Joe Flacco outside of Alex Collins. So, and let's take it to Joe Flacco in the pass game. The Ravens have really kind of just gone crazy so far in this game, in the pass game. 32 pass attempts for Flacco, completing 71.9% of his passes. Is this the Flacco renaissance? Is that what world we're living in right now with Lamar Jackson there, who's actually gotten some snaps? He's thrown a pass, did not complete it, but you're looking at this kind of reborn Ravens passing game, and so far it has come to fruition. And let's talk about John Brown. I want to talk about John Brown, my guy. 3 catches for 44 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets. You love to see it. Brown, he is making reality out of what we saw in the preseason. What we heard in the offseason out of Ravens camp was that he was the best player on the offense through all of the offseason. And he's making that a reality here in week 1. If he's on waiver wires right now, go get him. This is exactly what we wanted to see from Brown, that he was going to be out there and healthy. This is a good pass defense in Buffalo, too. Tre'Davious White, Vontae Davis, that's a good cornerback duo. They had really good safety play last year out of Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. This is an exploitable pass, or a tough pass defense that the Ravens are exploiting right now. This is going to be a big-time decision to make in fantasy football. Do we trust this Ravens offense going forward? Now, it's also worth noting the guy who just caught the touchdown from Joe Flacco is Michael Crabtree, who leads the team, is tied in the team lead with targets with Nick Boyle. He has 6, Crabtree 6, and the touchdown on 38 yards. Crabtree is definitely a guy who we're going to be playing as well. I know I'm excited about John Brown, but Michael Crabtree is, of course, still the odds-on favorite to lead the team in targets. So I do like to see Crabtree out there playing well. I think he's definitely a wide receiver 3 in fantasy right now, alongside John Brown. And if this Ravens passing offense is going to be this breakout unit, this reborn unit under Joe Flacco, like, that's pretty exciting. That is pretty exciting for fantasy purposes. Willie Snead also out there with five targets, and the passing distribution is going to be interesting in Baltimore, and we're going to have to monitor it. We'll talk at the end of this game and see what we want to take away from it on all sides. And going forward, also we're looking at the Buffalo passing offense. Oh, not much to look at. Let's look at something else. So elsewhere in the first half, we'll also just go pop over to the Jacksonville game. They are currently winning on the road in New York, 13-9. The Jacksonville Jaguars have control of this contest right now. Blake Bortles has a passing touchdown. He also has an interception. No surprise. He throws interceptions. That's just kind of what he does. The passing touchdown was to not any of those receivers that we were all hyping up. Dede Westbrook, Keelan Cole, Dante Moncrief. Moncrief currently blanked in the stat line right now. Is actually to TJ Yeldon. Yeldon's going to be a big-time popular pickup in the wake of this Leonard Fournette injury, if this injury to Fournette is serious, and he has consistently struggled with lower body injuries, whether you look at just in his college career, in his early NFL career. He's always been a guy who's been dinged up, always on the injury report. When he's injured, he does slow down. So TJ Yeldon is definitely somebody to own in 10 to 12-man leagues. If Fournette is out next week, he's going to be a solid play as an RB2 in fantasy football. You want to go out on the waiver wire and try to pick up TJ Yeldon right now. Again, it's nice that he's also a passing game asset too. That's not really a strength of Leonard Fournette. He's a solid pass catcher. He caught 36 balls as a rookie, but we'll be looking for TJ Yeldon to kind of step into that RB2 workload, and I think we'll probably see it. I mentioned that receiving group right now. Dede Westbrook leads the way with 5 targets, 4 catches on 47 yards, and Keelan Cole has, as expected, been a big deep threat. 2 catches for 31 yards, a long of 31 there. He's out there and playing well. Saquon Barkley not playing all that well against the Jaguars defense, kind of to be expected. 12 carries, 25 yards, averaging just 2 yards a carry. He's not been a big asset in the passing game so far. Only 1 target. Of course, Odell Beckham leads the way with 8 targets, 6 catches, 48 yards. We know Odell. He's going to get his. Even in this tough matchup, he's still an asset there. Sterling Shepard is second on the team, 4 catches for 38 yards on 4 targets. You like to see that from Sterling Shepard. He's a guy who I think is going to way outkick his value. And looking at a couple other places in the chat right now, I'm looking at right now at Frank Gore never giving up on the Infinity Stone. That is a hilarious comment in the chat, and it's very indicative of reality. Frank Gore is not going to go away. I like Kenyon Drake a lot this year. I think he's a breakout running back, but Frank Gore, to be honest, he will consistently mix in. Right now, he has 5 carries, 49 yards, whereas Kenyon Drake has 6 carries for 40 yards. Frank Gore, he's a veteran. He's going to be out there, and he's going to continue to work in well. I don't like seeing all these tweets. Why am I looking at the tweets on my screen? Why is that? What is it with this website? Just kidding. I love this website, Yahoo.com. Looking elsewhere in the Dolphins offense, 1 catch on 10 yards and a touchdown for Kenny Stills. Kenny Stills, I know it's only 1 catch. It's good that he comes away with the touchdown. This is going to be a low-scoring, slow game, so we're not too concerned that this hasn't been a big aerial attack for the Dolphins. And I do like the fact that Stills scored that touchdown. 3 catches for 31 yards for Albert Wilson. Jakeem Grant also mixing in with the absence of Devontae Parker. 3 catches, 28 yards. This game is not a situation where we're going to be looking for a lot of action, but it is a contest that we do like to see some of these players out there that we expected to do well, no doubt about it. Elsewhere in the first half, some of the other contests we haven't really touched on yet. Let's go back into that Minnesota-San Francisco game to talk a little bit there. They're a team that we can look at right now. In the second half, they're already starting to move. They have scored another touchdown, and it looks like it was a defensive touchdown against Jimmy Garoppolo. Look, if you drafted Jimmy Garoppolo, A, you probably drafted him too high. B, you should have known not to start him in this matchup. This was a rough spot on the road against one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the NFL. in Minnesota. So definitely an issue there. Maybe he's a guy that you can buy low on, some of these offensive players, because I do think the 49ers offense is going to be good. It's just probably not going to happen here in week one, even in the second half, especially if they're teeing off there. And one thing we want to hit on before we leave, Mike Evans just got this news alert right now. He is down with an injury. It's unknown what the extent is. We follow at Yahoo Fantasy on Twitter for more updates as they come. That just brings us back to some of these other players that we talked about earlier in that Bucs offense. Chris Godwin, obviously, he would step into a massive, massive target share if Mike Evans is down for a while. But don't forget about DeSean Jackson, who is seeing some of that deep ball regression that I think we expected to happen. He had a lot of air yards last year, but not a lot of production. Here with Ryan Fitzpatrick in his first start there this season, we're seeing a lot from DeSean Jackson. So he's another guy that if Mike Evans misses any time, we're going to be in on DeSean Jackson. We're going to be in on Chris Godwin, especially Godwin is a player that I love. You know, he has wide receiver one upside. That might be a hot take, but if Evans is down, I think if 100 targets it goes the way of Chris Godwin, he's a breakout player for sure in this offense. So that is the big news there of that first half. We're going to just head over to Roto World real quick and we'll just recap some of the major headlines with the last 4 minutes that we have here right now. Eric Berry officially inactive for week one. That was kind of to be expected. He had a heel injury coming into this contest. Don't forget that the Chiefs' defense is not good. The secondary right now has 3 slot corners managing their cornerback position. Orlando Scandrick, Kendall Fuller, who's actually a really good slot corner and will continue to play the slot. Steven Nelson is the other cornerback on the outside. These guys are going to get worked by the Chargers in week one. That's my prediction. I took the over on this game. And another reason I took that was Joey Bosa actually is going to miss week one of the best defensive players in the NFL and probably the best defensive player up there with Casey Hayward on the Chargers defense. So I'm looking for that contest to go hit the over. And no surprise, Eric Berry is definitely a part of that. We talked about the Goodwin injury, the Fournette injury. And this has been a fun week one experience so far. We are just hitting us with information here in week one on the first round of the halftime show. Remember, this show is going to stream in the second round of games this afternoon. We're going to come right back here, give you all the information you need to know about your fantasy teams and what the heck is going on out there in week one action. During the halftime of the second games, we'll talk a little bit about the games as they conclude. We'll talk about that as well. So for right now, I'm Matt Harmon. Remember, you can subscribe to this show on Twitch. You can check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Facebook, Yahoo Sports Fantasy there. And you can follow us on Twitter at Yahoo Fantasy. You can follow me on Twitter at MattHarmon_BYB. So come back for the second round of the show in the later games. We're actually going to have somebody call in. We're going to have a reader call in on the second half. And it should be a lot of fun. So we will see you there. And I think we're out for now. Peace.